Don't know really. I think it has to do with me being in the right place at the right time and having the instinct to, you know, pick kind of, something out of the bunch. Although at that time in the late 80s, there was no street brands, there was no street fashion, there was no urban wear. There was skate and surf, but in New York, there were those of us that just did our own thing, and we picked and choose. And the idea was to try to find your own identity in this identity that is now streetwear. But then we were just doing what appealed to us. I'm originally from Chicago, and moving to New York in the 80s, I sort of already had an aesthetic of what people in Chicago were into. And then being into fashion, I was a model, so I had fashion insight. And so when I discovered Stussy, I got to give a shout out to my man Albert Ragusa, who introduced me to Sean and used to give me the clothing. So I started wearing it and being visible and prominent in the downtown scene. I was one of the handful of guys, people like Jules, Gate, Paul Middleman, Albie, some other guys that skated in the downtown scene were kind of wearing Stussy, and Sean was very smart to, get it in the hands of the right people. So I was probably one of the first non-skater, kind of non-alternative. This is before hip-hop was really prominent. I come from the dance music scene and the fashion scene, so sort of fusing that all together, it created something else. And as a result, I ended up organizing a big international Stussy tribe gathering in Tokyo. At the time, I'd been going back and forth to Tokyo. We're talking now 1981. So we brought all the tribe members from all over the world, and everybody met in Tokyo. Hooked up with the Tokyo guys, Hiroshi Fujiwara and Takegi Khan and the Major Force guys, and we just all got together, had a good party at Goals in Tokyo, and it went from there. Going forward, I got involved with people like my man Ash Hudson, who had a brand called Con Art, Rick Klotz, who had a brand called has a brand called Fresh Jive, and just always sticking close to guys that were developing fashion. And again, this is before the bigger brands. So, it was sort of like an evolution, and people that were involved in clothing sought me out and, gave me their stuff, and it sort of evolved from there. And that's probably it. Well, a lot has changed. I think the landscape has changed, and I think, what I set out to create, again, honestly, it was right place, right time. I didn't set out to create anything. The fact that I've been recognized as a major player in the evolution of this culture happened by accident. I don't believe that the original foundation, mind squad, if you will, the original key influencers of the scene really set out and had an idea that it would grow to be what it is. I think the major change that has come about is the way information is distributed. We didn't have the internet. There were very few publications or magazines that covered the culture because the culture was still in development. And I've always been very ubiquitous in how I do everything. Even though I knew guys that skated, I wasn't a skater. I knew guys that DJ'd, that produced, that designed, that were artists. The scene back in the 80s, it was more of a community. It was like-minded individuals that had the desire to create and wanted to express themselves, and we wanted wanted respect from our peers. We wanted those that we respected to respect us. So the idea was that if you did a piece of art, or if you did a t-shirt, or if you did a beat, or if you had a party, or whatever it is you were doing, you would hope that your friends would support you. I gave parties in the 80s, 90s, and beyond, and I got a lot of support from a lot of key individuals, and it was more organic. It was more, it was something new and exciting and something to look forward to. And again, we didn't have the references. We were creating this on the fly. We were doing what we were doing from the goodness of our hearts. It was very genuine. Now it's very contrived, I believe. Now I believe you have guys that specifically go into it to make money. Money was obviously something that we needed, but it wasn't the major motivating factor. The major motivating factor was to be authentic, to be creative, and to gain respect from your peers. You know, the major players, you wanted those guys to say, hey man, what you're doing is that's really happening, that's cool, you know. So I think now you have more, it's oversaturated now. It's hard for the youth, even with all the information, it's hard for them to discern what's real and what's not real, what's good and what's not good, and it makes it a little bit difficult. But on the other hand, the good thing is that we have a global connection now, and it's easier. You know, I used to have to go to Japan to connect with my Japanese folk. I had to go to London to check with my UK folk. I had to go to Paris to check with my Parisian folk. I had to, you know, be in LA to touch base with my LA people. So now I can stay connected via the internet and via, you know, telephones and email and that kind of thing. And so the information can come that way. So that's, I think, how it's changed. But it's positive on one hand and negative just the same.